2, 4, 6, 18, 19, we're not core it yet. 2021, 2023.
Oh,
23 still. Oh, and 4 online. We're okay. If members want to take their seats, we've got 4 members online, don't forget. So, does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Binet.
Ma'am, before we recommence, I wonder if you just allow me 2 moments to inform members that we've reached a very amicable conclusion with Cheshire Homes, and I'd like to thank Deputy Gardner for helping to bring things to an early conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Gardner, sorry.
I thought, first of all, I do confirm that the solution for the 2025 has been found, and based on the Minister's commitment to the Assembly, I would withdraw my amendment, which I will reserve my right to bring it back to the Assembly if it will not materialise in payments to Cheshire Homes.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment that we're currently considering? Number 8. Constable of St Clement.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll be brief. I just wanted to lay a rumour. Oh, sorry, I did the wrong way around, didn't I? I'll be brief, ma'am. I just wanted to lay a rumour that alcoholics are the problem as far as drinking is concerned. They are a part of the problem. But having been a licensee for the best part of my career at the tough end of town, so to speak, functions and all year round trading and Christmas parties, I can tell you that it's the weekend millionaires that are responsible for a lot more of the aggravation and probably problems with ambulance drivers, etc., etc. They are price sensitive because what they do is they predominate at the end of the month when the salaries are paid. We can see that in our takings. And they go mad. I have a friend who's in the same position as me. He's been assaulted 6 times in his career, hospitalised twice. And those are all weekend millionaires. They're guys and ladies who go absolutely loopy. It's not pretty, it's not nice. So I just wanted to say that because they are price sensitive, you can tell. They throw it away over the weekend, and there's less and less of them at the moment, and that is because of cost of living crisis, which means that the price of alcohol and going out is a factor in the amount of time they spend out in the evening economy. And that's all I wanted to say to help the proposition.
Thank you, Conrad. Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to express my opposition to the proposed amendment to the government plan, which seeks to reinstate the indexation of alcohol duty in line with the retail price index. While I understand the concerns raised regarding the public health impacts of alcohol consumption, I urge us to approach this issue with a more comprehensive perspective. In my previous speech last year, I highlighted that the key issue here is addiction, not merely the price of alcohol. Raising alcohol taxes, as proposed in this amendment, will not solve the root cause of alcohol dependency. Alcohol addiction is a complex health condition, and treating it with higher taxes is both misguiding and ineffective. As rightly was pointed out by others, excessive alcohol consumption is a symptom of a deeper illness. No matter how high the taxes go, addicts will find ways to feed their addiction. They may resort to more dangerous methods to secure funds, such as selling household goods, or they may choose to drink in an uncontrolled, unregulated environment, further compounding the risk to their health and well-being. I had the same view on the related amendment as I said last year, and I continue to believe that putting the price up will not solve any problems such addicts have, because they will find the money that they need for the drink regardless, and their families and finances would suffer. As Deputy Miles mentioned, Romania have high use of alcohol percentage. I want to make a bit of clarity on the why. Besides the very many cultural celebrations taking place during the year, increasing use, a large consumption is happening in villages where there's more poverty, at home production and consumption of alcohol, many people drinking their problems out, and these are poor people, drinking no matter if the price of the drinks, and many in uncontrolled environment. Romania, Jersey, or other places, alcoholism is a reality for many families. Increasing taxes on alcohol may harm the most vulnerable in our society, those struggling with addiction, while failing to address the underlying issue. I gave this example before, and the parallel with it is important, so I'll repeat it. Should we tax knives to stop knife crime, or focus on treating the root cause of violence? We cannot effectively treat an illness, an addiction like alcoholism, with a financial penalty. In addition to this, we must consider the broader implication of such a tax hike on our economy and businesses. The hospitality industry, already on the edge due to rising costs and changing consumer behavior, cannot afford to bear the additional burden of higher alcohol duties. We've all heard the reports of local pubs and restaurants closing their doors, businesses that have been staples of our community for generations. If we continue to increase the financial strain on these businesses, we risk seeing more closures, putting local jobs at risk, and weakening our economy further. Just last week, we heard the unfortunate news of another pub closing in Jersey, which adds to the previous ones, which is a growing list of those struggling to survive in the face of rising costs. It's clear that the hospitality sector is already facing enormous challenges, with people not affording to go out or eat out as often anymore. Adding further costs through alcohol tax increases could drive even more businesses to the brink, resulting in fewer places for our citizens to gather and fewer jobs for our workforce. Furthermore, this proposed tax hike fails to solve the fundamental problem of alcohol addiction. The issue that the deputy raises is real and to be acknowledged, but it's not simply about the price of alcohol. It is about the accessibility of treatment and support for those struggling with addiction. We need more robust measures that focus on prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation, not just punitive financial penalties. Rather than penalizing individuals and businesses, we should be investing in addiction treatment services, public health campaigns, and social support structures that address the root cause of alcohol misuse. This would be a more sustainable and effective solution, benefiting not only individuals struggling with addiction, but also the wider community. In conclusion, I urge my colleagues to reconsider the proposed amendment. We must seek holistic solutions that address both the health impacts of alcohol consumption and the challenges faced by our hospitality sector. Raising taxes on alcohol will not solve addiction, and it will only add further strain to an industry that is already facing difficult times. Instead, let's focus on real solutions that provide support to those who need it and help our local business thrive. Please reject this amendment.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I rise to speak and encourage members to reject this proposition. And I do so principally from two perspectives. One is my concern, as Deputy Kovac has just referred to, is my concern for the hospitality sector in Jersey. And obviously Jersey has become a very high price jurisdiction. We are we're forcing higher prices into that, obviously from the perspective of wage rises, etc. And so it is becoming harder and harder to run a hospitality business successfully in Jersey. But I say that also whilst understanding that there is a difference between the on-trade and the off-trade. And when it comes to the hospitality sector, they are themselves known as the on-trade and the on-licensed trade. And it is there where I see the greatest problem in continuing to increase duties in line with inflation or any other measure for that matter. In the off-licensed trade, I think there is still an argument to potentially increase duties in that area, because I think, and as I've heard many members of this assembly talk about those, I really don't like the term prees, where you drink before you go out, and how that is the trend. And obviously that in itself takes away business from the hospitality sector, because people are going to the supermarkets, they're drinking at home first, then at the end of that, when already imbibed probably far too much, they then go out for the last hour or so into the hospitality sector and drink there, spending less in the hospitality sector. Why is that important? Well, one of the reasons is that the hospitality sector is actually the place where drinking is regulated. And they do have security. They have licensed bar staff who are under legal obligations to make sure that people do not get further intoxicated in their establishments. And I know we have all seen, may I dare to suggest many of us have been intoxicated in hospitality establishments in the island. I know Deputy of Grouville, not the Deputy of Grouville, the Constable of Grouville, sir. Clearly never. And so I think it is important that the highly regulated sector, where you can buy alcohol, is struggling, and duty rises are playing a big part in that. The off-licensed sector of the alcohol market, which is much less regulated, and is able to sell alcohol at much lower prices, is probably the area we should be focusing on. Which brings me to a point which I think is really important. I think as a government and as an assembly, we need to find a way to put differential duties on the on-trade and the off-trade. I think that is part of the key here. And if we were able to do so, I think it would be much easier to work with Deputy Miles's proposition. And so I think that's, in a sense, my view of a solution. How would I perhaps be able to accept Deputy Miles's proposition if it was focused on the off-trade and not just carte blanche across the off and on-trade? But of course, at the moment, that's not really possible to do. As I understand it, for technical reasons, it is difficult for us to tax one differently to the other, or put duties on one rather than the other. And I would like us all, I think it would be good for us to find a solution to that. Separately, another reason why I rise to speak against this amendment is the efficacy of this idea that by constantly increasing prices, we get better health outcomes. Let me restate that. By constantly increasing prices, we reduce the amount of alcohol consumed. I've heard Iceland mentioned in debate today. Sweden, Norway and Iceland, which we all know are highly taxed jurisdictions when it comes to alcohol, between 2010 and 2020, their alcohol consumption per capita increased for all three of those countries. So whereas I believe in Ireland, for instance, also known as a place where a drink is enjoyed, their alcohol per capita consumption decreased. Their alcohol consumption per capita decreased in that same 10-year period. That in itself then makes me question the effectiveness of using price as a mechanism for reducing alcohol consumption. Another reason I say this as well is because when you look at our own island, which I know does not have a record that we should be proud of in terms of the per capita consumption of alcohol, but it has effectively been policy since 2008 to increase duty on alcohol. And between 2008 and 2015, the amount of alcohol consumed did decline, per capita, of course, did decline. For 7 years, that policy effectively was working. But since 2015, the amount of alcohol consumed per capita has actually stagnated, and then more recently perhaps begun to rise a little. Each year, except for the last 2 years, of course, but I'm talking up to 2022, the price of alcohol and alcohol duty rose. So every year the price of alcohol was rising, but the success in reducing the cost of alcohol stopped around 2015. I take this from Jersey's alcohol profile. I take these statistics from Jersey's alcohol profile. And even now, whilst we have had a couple of years where alcohol duty has been minimised, the price of alcohol compared to RPI is still higher than RPI in terms of the constant rise of that price has been in excess of RPI since 2008. And that's the case today. So I do question the actual effectiveness of using price as a way to reduce alcohol consumption on a per capita basis. And I think Jersey statistics bear out that it isn't a simple equation where you put the price up and the amount consumed goes down. I think that's really important. I also think, as a third element as to why I don't think it's appropriate for us at this stage to say what should be in next year's budget, and that is because we really do need to see how the hospitality sector gets on through the year ahead, through 2025. And I revert back to, that would be less of a problem if we were able to have different alcohol duties for the on-trade and the off-trade. Then perhaps it would be easier to do so. We could say, okay, we're happy that the off-trade we will make a decision now for 2026, but we'll wait on the on-trade and just see how their world goes, or their year pans out. So I think it is really important that we leave the options open for this Assembly come this time next year when we're looking at a budget, that the options are open for the government to take a litmus test of how the hospitality sector is performing and whether increased alcohol duties are likely to harm them further or not. I think that's the wise thing to do at this stage, rather than trying to tell ourselves now what we should do in a year's time. I don't think is an appropriate way to do this. So there are three things. One is the effectiveness of alcohol duties. I'm definitely not convinced, and I think the statistics bear out. Increased alcohol duty is no longer reducing per capita consumption. The lack of distinction between the on-trade and the off-trade, I think, is a real problem. And as a result of that, to bind our hands now for next year would be an inappropriate and an unwise thing to do. As a result of those 3 points, I ask members to join me in rejecting this amendment. Thank you.
Much, Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Very briefly, the Minister has referred to arguments which were raised by the Economic and International Affairs panel in the last budget. So there may be a bit of déjà vu here regarding the use of statistics and what we've actually seen in Jersey in terms of alcohol consumption, and a lack of evidence of that being linked to alcohol duty. But one of the matters that was raised by the panel was in relation to the desirability of a distinction in terms of the duty that's charged in respect of retail as opposed to hospitality establishments. And so in terms of communications with the Treasurer, I'm very in favour in terms of the Treasury and the beginning to focus in that particular area about the possibility of adjusting duty there. It's very important that we support hospitality, and I want to point out that in our own parish, we have recently seen four underlined restaurants just close, I believe. And that's before they've had to deal with some of the extra cost kind of factors that we're beginning to see come in. We know that the minimum wage, yes, I know that we're hoping to produce some mitigation against that, but that has been one factor. We can't escape the fact that that this is something that keeps varying. Freight costs, the costs of employing hospitality staff, all these come into play. So if we were to just say, well, let's fix this duty down the line to this, and it's going to really that's going to make the difference, I think we need to take into account there are variables all the time which need to be taken account. So I personally don't consider it's wise to just ignore them, just say, well, we're going to do this in this area in any event. Iceland, I would like to, I have been lucky enough to visit there. The way in which I'll conclude is that one of their alcoholic delicacies is made with putrefied shark, and if that's not enough to put anyone off drinking, I don't know what is. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start by congratulating Deputy Morel in maintaining his work on introducing licensing legislation. It has been a difficult task for ministers before to bring such legislation forward, and successfully having I still remember vividly the issues that we incurred in 2017 when trying to do the same, and so I wish him the very best with his consultation process. It is an important thing and it is well overdue. But Deputy Morel talked about the impact or not of duty. And of course, duty is an annual feature in most budgets. And in fact, it's quite unusual that in this budget, there is no change to alcohol duty. And so I'm grateful to Deputy Miles for bringing this amendment for us to consider, because I consider that preventative health is one of the most important things that we can do, and health prevention. Some speakers have suggested that alcohol duty is simply to discourage people who are perhaps alcoholics. But of course, we know that alcohol affects people in many, many other ways. And I'm sure, sir, that you see many cases come before you in the other part of this building that relate to alcohol, as Deputy Miles outlined in her speech. But of course, last year, one of the fantastic things that we managed to do was publish Jersey's population health strategy with the help of our public health team. That focuses on the need for prevention in our community, and we only need to look at the causes or the high incidences of various health issues that we have in our society to know and understand that we need to take a preventative approach to health and the health of islanders in order to improve outcomes for every islander and to ensure that we don't see and I'm struggling to re-find the disease projection survey that was also published recently that shows already we see people in Jersey suffering in a huge number with hypertension, high blood pressure, and other diseases such as cancer, liver disease, heart issues. All of those have alcohol as a contributing factor. I myself, being a breast cancer survivor, am acutely aware that in order to maintain my health going forward, I have to address my lifestyle and ensure that I look after myself and avoid becoming obese and avoid alcohol consumption in excess, because I know that those are factors that could potentially be a cause of cancer, and I certainly do not wish to go through that again. So we are here to talk about duty, but I much admire Deputy Montfort-Tadier's speeches. He's brought a lot of levity already to the sitting this week, which is greatly appreciated. And I thought his speech was very measured. And I know he was speaking against the amendment, but I also felt he did a great deal of good for the amendment, because he talked about the effectiveness of duty on tobacco and how we have seen a reduction in smoking over the years as duties have increased, but also other measures, yes, have been introduced, such as the packaging and the ability to purchase cigarettes in separate parts of shops. And of course, those are things that we should discuss as an assembly in relation to alcohol as well, because if we are going to tackle the issues that we can see so clearly in front of us, if we find ourselves at the top of a league table for the wrong reasons, we know that that is an issue we need to address. We know we have high cancer rates. We know we have high levels of hypertension and other things. So we need to give those messages to our community to encourage people to take responsibility for their own health. And one of those levers that we have is the lever of duty. And so, sir, I will be supporting Deputy Miles in her amendment today, and I would encourage members to think very carefully about this and about the people that we know all around us who need also to be reminded to protect their own health and take a preventative measure rather than alternatives. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Conor Thompson-Pollard.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to have listened to Deputy Morrell, and I have sympathy for the amendment. The points that Deputy Morrell brought up about the fundamental difference between on and off licence, I think is fundamental, and is the reason why I can't support the amendment as it is, because I feel that we need to listen to that difference. I don't believe we need to touch the hospitality trade, the on-licence trade at all, but the off-licence trade, yes, so we need to deal with. One only has to go to an off-licence. You'll find best part of 50% of the shelf space is taken up with alcohol these days. And I don't think I'm far wrong, I haven't measured it, but certainly my observations tell me that. That in turn leads to uncontrolled drinking at home, and that in turn leads to alcoholism, which we see being prevalent, as is alluded to in the papers presented. So I think we need to be a little bit more acute in our approach to this. We can look at alcohol strength and taxation, which is something I have to say I've been banging on about for years, but the difference between a high alcohol beer or wine is significant with different people, and I think we could do a lot better than we have to date. So I look forward to the Minister bringing in revised licensing framework in due course, and I'm sure within the parishes we'll be happy to work with him to do that. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Miles to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I'd like to thank all the members that have contributed to this debate. I will be brief because maybe then we do stand chance of finishing on time this evening. Deputy Tadier, yes, we do need to think about campaigns and visibility. You're quite right about tobacco. You know, you can't buy tobacco easily. You have to go to a special part of the shop. Other countries only allow plain packaging. You can only buy it from a very small amount of retailers. Deputy Miller says that this is not the place for a debate about reducing alcohol. I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with her for the second time today. It's the budget debate. It's absolutely the right place to be talking about reducing alcohol, given that price is the single most influential factor in reducing alcohol consumption at a population level. Deputy Kovac, Deputy Morel evidently defended the hospitality industry in the way that I would have expected them to do so. I'm also grateful for Deputy Morel taking forward the licensing strategy. As a civil servant, I still bear some of the scars of the previous work that we did around licensing. It's a tricky job, and it needs to be gripped. What I would say in response to Deputy Kovac is this amendment really isn't about tackling addiction. Addiction is completely something else than overconsumption of alcohol. It's about a broader population level and getting the consumption of ordinary people down. And I liked Connetab Troy's allusion of the weekend millionaires. It's about the home drinkers, the binge drinkers. And that ties into what Connetab Jackson said. You know, you go into any supermarket, probably over 50% actually is alcohol. You know, it is very easy to get your hands on it. Deputy Scott again defended she raised the fact that hospitality are closing. Yes, we see that, but sometimes a closure can result in innovation and creativity and open up something else. And finally, Deputy Moore spoke about the most, what goes to the heart of this amendment really, which is preventative health. We've got some really good public health research in Jersey that shows that alcohol is a very damaging factor. We've got high rates of heart disease, high rates of liver disease. You only have to look at the death statistics. It isn't the young people that are consuming the alcohol. It is people my age, slightly younger, slightly older, that are drinking far too much, and that is a contributory factor to many, many illnesses. So on that note, I won't speak for any longer. I thank everybody for listening, and I propose the amendment. Thank you. Oh, no, I don't. I call for the appel. Thank you.
That is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on Amendment 8. And if members return to their seats, I then ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 14 votes pour, 31 votes contre, no abstentions.
With 14 and 31, please, sir.
Those voting for the Connotabs of St Lawrence, St Martin, St Clement and Grewville, and deputies Lehegerard, Gardner, Moore, Ozef, War, Miles, Jearn, Wilson, Andrews, and online deputy Doublé. Those voting contre, the Connotabs of St Brelard, Trinity, St Peter, St John, St Mary and St Saviour, and deputies Southern, Labby, Tadier, Luce, Morel, Ayer, Ward, Alves, Gorst, Farnham, Mesick, Balash, Coles, Porray, Scott, Feltham, Miller, Howell, Binney, Ferry, Kovac, Ward, and online, Constable of St Juan, Deputy Binney and Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Very well, that brings us on to the 29th amendment, which is brought by the Council of Ministers.
Sir, and at this point, before it is read out, I have checked with the graphic. If I may redeclare an interest as a particularly small distillery owner, and for Hansard and the public record, the distillery submitted a consultation response to the original budget, and all States members should have received a letter from the distillery on the matter of Amendment 29. And as such, to reiterate, hopefully that is in the public record now, that is clear, but I will be recusing physically from the chamber yet again.
Very well, thank you very much. I'll ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Paragraph O. After the words as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report, insert the words except that on page 33 for the figure 40,000 should be substituted 20,000.
Who's speaking? Deputy Mayor.
Sir, I rise to address an amendment proposed by the Council of Ministers that underscores our commitment to the growth and success of our island's craft distillery industry. It's interesting after our last debate. As you may know, our small distilleries are an important part of Jersey's cultural and economic fabric. These enterprises split roughly into two groups: those distilling from raw agricultural products such as apples and wheat, and those that import neutral base spirit, often then transforming it into gins or other spirits with botanical flavourings. Up until now, Jersey has provided a reduced rate equivalent to 50% of the standard rate for small distillers whose production did not exceed, on average, 2,000 litres of pure alcohol yearly, and which was distilled from scratch using either apples, grain, or various other kinds of agricultural product. That rate is available both to domestic producers and importers who meet the volume criteria to avoid unlawful discrimination between domestic and imported goods. The budget for 2025 to 2028 had originally proposed increasing the production limit to qualify as a small distillery from the current threshold of 2,000 to 40,000 litres of pure alcohol. It also proposed a new rate of relief for distillers who purchased base spirits which may have been distilled on island or which are imported. The new rate for those importers of spirit was proposed to be 75% of the full standard rate, so that they had a 25% discount. However, following further representations from the industry, we are now putting forward an amendment. We now propose a single 50% duty relief rate for all small distillers, regardless of how their base spirit is sourced. While we recognise the extra effort involved in distilling directly from raw agricultural products, this decision reflects a broader consideration of factors including the growth potential of the prevailing industry practices. To offset the financial impact of this broader relief, we are also proposing to reduce the production threshold to qualify for the relief to 20,000 litres of pure alcohol, which is equivalent to over 70,000 standard bottles of production. This adjustment will ensure that all local distillers can benefit while maintaining fairness and fiscal responsibility. The relief will, of course, also be available to spirits imported from small distilleries overseas to avoid unlawful discrimination under our various international trade agreements. This amendment demonstrates our commitment to fostering a supportive environment where our craft distilleries can continue to thrive and contribute to our economy and cultural identity. And so just before I finish, can I just add one thing from the previous debate? I think my predecessor said last year that we would look at some form of on-sale and off-sale difference. That is on our policy framework, but I am told by the tax team that that is a monumental piece of work. It's very much more complicated than it sounds. It's on the list. It may not be something we can do this year, and we think it may not be something that the industry actually likes when it's rolled out because it may involve such a huge amount of administration. So it's on the list, but it is not coming soon. Thank you. Sorry, I ask members to support the amendment.
And is the amendment seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Moore.
So I'd just like a little direction, please, whether the government, the minister there described that they have amended their amendment, and I'd simply like to understand whether they are now being taken as one, as amended, or whether there'll be an option to vote on the different parts. Other members may have received a representation from a local distiller, a creator of very fine cider in my constituency in St. Juan, and they have described their support, with which I agree, to the reduction of the production levels. However, and I would entirely agree with them, express some concern at the ability for people to import alcohol to their raw production, and I think that that is a definition that I would like the opportunity, and I'm sure other members might also, to vote on separately.
Well, there is only one amendment to this particular. I mean, this amendment doesn't have an amendment to it. It is.
Well, perhaps I was thrown by the description that the minister gave. She did describe an amendment to their amendment. And
I mean, there's only one paragraph to be voted on. There can't be a separate vote. So I'm sure the minister will clarify in just a moment. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition, or on the amendment, I should say? Deputy Balash.
So may I follow up from the speech made by the Deputy for St. Juan, because it may not be possible to respond to the request which all members have received from the particular distiller in question in the context of this amendment. But what I think I would like to do is to ask the Minister to give an undertaking to give some consideration to the points made by the distillers, and if it is agreed that it is a valid point, and I must say it seems to me to be a valid point on the face of it, that some action would be taken to differentiate between different kinds of distillers as requested by the particular small operator.
Deputy Morell.
Sir, I fear we're in the world of talking about matters which aren't to do with the amendment at hand, because both Deputy Moore and Deputy Balash's interventions are interventions that I would happily respond to in the auspices of an appropriate debate on that matter. But this isn't a debate on that matter. This is a debate on the 40,000 and 20,000. And my concern is that we've just had two speeches which are about a completely different matter altogether. And as such, I'm not able to respond in a way that I would be able to explain to their concerns and the concerns of the distiller that they're talking about. But in terms of this amendment, I do hope that members will support this amendment, which has been brought in conjunction with industry and their concerns, as has any changes that have been made elsewhere with regard to the concerns raised by Deputy Balash and Deputy Moore. Any changes have been as a result, if they are there. I'm not sure they are, but the ones that I've seen to be referred to would only be as a result of engagement with industry. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Joseph.
Forgive me, sir. I would be very grateful if the Minister could explain in her summing up what she is referring to, or the previous Minister, because I myself have heard the arguments and I don't understand what we're voting on and why this can't be changed. And if she is able to actually change it, could she give consideration to bringing a revision in the law to take advantage, or if the representations are correct, can she correct it by making an amendment, which she is able to do in the actual finance bill?
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon the Deputy Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I do understand the confusion, because I slightly confused myself when looking at the amendment. There are two elements. There are two elements. As I discussed, what the amendment that we're debating relates to the government plan. The budget said that we would move the production limit up to 40,000 litres of alcohol. Following lots of debate and discussion, including with the distillers, we have reduced that down to 20,000 litres. So that is reducing the volume that you can produce to be considered a small distiller and to have the benefit of the reduced relief rate, of relief. Now, I have to confess, I will have to check as to where the actual relief sits. I think the actual rate of relief does not sit in the budget, it may sit in the Finance Act itself. And we originally did propose two rates of relief for distillers, one for those, the higher rate of discount for those who actually distill from raw produce, so the ones who are distilling from apples and wheat, to reflect the extra work they do. And then we had a slightly lower relief rate for those who are bringing in the spirit. That was our original proposal. There has been a huge amount of consultation with industry, and we have, on the basis of a lot of that, we accepted the single rate of relief of 50%. So everybody who is making craft gin, whether you distill from scratch or whether you buy in the spirit and flavour it if you like, is my basic understanding, you will have the same rate of relief when you sell the product. There has been a huge amount of consultation and discussion over this, and that was the outcome we arrived at. If the relief rate is in the Finance Act, I will check that overnight and we'll be able to confirm that tomorrow when I present the finance law. But for the sake of the budget, the only change that we are actually discussing is the reduction in production limit to 20,000 from 40,000. And I will have to check on where the relief rate sits, but that is not a matter for the budget. I think that may be a policy element, and that's why it's not in the budget. But I agree. I was giving everybody the full history of where we've got to over the last few months on this debate, and explaining why we now have the single rate of relief. So I don't know if that helps.
And
Thank
do you
sir.
maintain the amendment and you call for the appeal?
I maintain the amendment and call for the appeal, please, sir.
Well, the appeal is called for. Invite members, I don't think there's anyone out of the chamber, but to return to their seats if they are. And I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on amendment number 29. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted, 34 votes pour, 8 votes contre, 2 abstentions.
Those voting contre, the Conotop of St Lawrence deputies Tadier, Gardner, Coles, Miles, Jearn, Wilson and Andrews, and the abstentions were Deputy Ozef and Deputy Kovac.
Well, we now come to the Ninth Amendment brought by Deputy Jearn. There is an amendment to the amendment. And there's also an amendment to the amendment to the amendment. I suppose the first thing is to ask, do you accept both of those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Very well. Well, then I think we can take the proposition read as the members agree. We can take it read with the, as amended by the amendment and the amendment to the amendment. Jolly good. Excellent. Sorry? And it's just, I think, paragraph B that we take at this point, and B and C. B and C, yes. Very well, then I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
After the words ease of doing business here, there should be inserted the words ensuring that funding is made available to support the transition to a net zero economy through the promotion of sustainable finance. This will support these goals and provide a clear action plan and delivery framework embedding sustainability into financial practices. And C, after the words seeking to reduce operating costs, there should be inserted the words specifically making funding available for drivers to a net zero economy identified and delivered through the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, which will embed sustainability into financial practices and business practices and support the decarbonisation of the finance industry.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I put this amendment forward as I believe a significant proportion of the forecast Pillar 2 tax receipts, specifically from the package Improve the Competitiveness of the Island, should be directed towards developing and strengthening our sustainable and responsible financing offering and encouraging businesses to adopt more sustainable practices to advance a net zero economy. I said I would bring this amendment and the reasons for doing it during the Pillar 2 debate a few state assemblies ago. If you can all remember to cast your minds, but sorry, if states members can cast their minds back just such long ago. I could say a lot on sustainable finance, but I will leave it at that. But I would like to thank the Minister and his officers for working with me through this amendment and coming to a mutual agreement on the wording. I think this has been a good example of how backbenchers and ministers can work together to get an agreed compromise, and therefore I call for the appel.
Well, you
I
propose
Sorry,
the amendment.
please, states members.
Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Another member wishes to
Sorry, I do wish to speak.
Yes, Deputy.
I know there's been a tendency, we've either have extremely long debates, so I think yesterday we were getting through 2 amendments in a day or an afternoon, and now when things have been agreed, we almost forget to actually move the proposition, because I don't think we heard what the proposition is about and what it does and what the amendments do, sir. So maybe in the summing up, at least for the public record, if we can clarify exactly what the purpose is, what we're voting on. Because I know we're so euphoric when we reach agreement with the. It's not a criticism. I think it's understandable, but I think we do need to know what we're proposing and voting on here, sir.
Does any other member, having provided an opportunity for further speech from the proposer, does any other member wish to speak? No, Deputy Horst.
So I appreciate the Deputy wishing an intervention. It would seem to me that reading the proposition, it is quite clear what is included, and the amendment enhances, in my view, that clarity. Financial services firms have got 2 elements of their responsibility. One is moving themselves to be in line with a carbon neutral policy of the island, and the other is supporting and developing sustainability in the underlying work that they do. And that's what this amendment in effect does. And it points to the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, which is government working with industry and regulator over a period of time to allow that transformation in largely the latter area, but at the same time encouraging them from their own funding sources to comply with their own net zero obligations in line with the carbon neutral roadmap.
Does Any other person wish to speak on the amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Jeune to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I apologise that I misspoke earlier. I realise it's nearly past my bedtime, so... just to respond to Deputy Tadier, I believe I did say what this amendment was. We heard it being read out by the greffier, but then I also said in my beginning that I put this amendment forward because I believe a significant portion of the forecast Pillar 2 tax receipts should go that is being put aside, the 15 million to the package improve the competitiveness of the island, should be directed towards developing and strengthening our sustainable and responsible financing offering and encouraging businesses to adopt more sustainable practices to advance net zero economy. I said that in my opening speech. I believe that gave a good summing up of the wording that was agreed. And therefore I look forward to engaging with the Minister and his officers as they develop the package during 2025. And I hope that I can support them in making sure that this is what this amendment is trying to reach. Thank you.
Very much.
Call for the appel.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on the 9th amendment as amended and amended again. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, and I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted. 44 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions.
So before we continue, can I ask if you can indicate how many amendments left to be debated?
Well, yes, there are 1, 2, 3, there are 4 amendments left, and then when the amendments have been concluded, we return to debate on the budget government plan as amended, and after that, on the assumption, as I suspect it will be passed, then there will be dealing with the various statutory instruments that naturally flow, the finance and the finance law and the Appointed Day Act. Very well. The next amendment is the 3rd amendment brought by the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. Again, there is, I think, an amendment. Do you accept that amendment?
No, sir.
Very well. Well, then I'll ask the referee to read your amendment, and then we'll take the amendment as we come to it.
Paragraph O. After the words as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report, insert the words except that on page 41 after table 10. There should be inserted the words, within the revenue head of expenditure for the Cabinet Office, funding for Statistics Jersey will be increased by 157,000 to include 78,000 budget allocation and 79,000 growth allocation through the reallocation of other departmental expenditure within the Cabinet Office.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Seem to get all the fun jobs today, alcohol and now statistics. But this amendment, I am the rapporteur for the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. So the panel's proposed amendment aims to reinstate the funding position for 2025 by reflecting an increase in budget allocation and growth allocation so that Statistics Jersey can continue to provide key statistical outputs, including the Business Tendency Survey, the Jersey Opinions and Lifestyle Survey on an annual basis, and to undertake work in relation to gross value added for quarterly reporting. So members will remember that earlier this year, in September, the Assembly adopted the Statistics and Census Jersey Amendment Law to amend the 2018 law. in line with international best practice standards to maintain the public's trust and confidence in Jersey's statistical system. This law requires the provision of a process to secure adequate funding for Statistics Jersey, which is commensurate with its responsibilities under that law. Under Article 4.3 of that law, the Chief Minister must provide the Chief Statistician with the resources he requires to discharge the functions economically, effectively and efficiently. In addition, the new Article 4.5 places a duty on the States Assembly to hold the Chief Minister to account for the funding of key Tier 1 statistics. Whilst that law has not yet been implemented, the panel takes the view that through the adoption of the new law, a commitment has been signalled by the States Assembly and should be acted on accordingly. Statistics, sir, however boring, are the backbone of informed decision-making, fostering development and ensuring the policies and programmes are effective and efficient. It was the famous economist W. Edwards Deming who said, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." Government should maintain statistics functions because we need the framework for many things. We need informed decision-making. Reliable statistics provide a solid foundation for creating effective policies and making strategic decisions. They help governments understand trends, identify issues, and allocate resources more efficiently. We need them for economic planning and monitoring. Economic data, such as GVA, employment rates, inflation, are crucial to planning and monitoring the economic health of our island. And this data helps us setting fiscal policies, managing economic growth, and responding to economic crises. The statistics help us with our transparency and accountability. Publicly available statistics promote transparency and accountability. They allow islanders to see their government is performing and ensure that public funds are being used effectively. A robust statistical system enhances public trust and confidence in government. When people see that decisions are based on reliable data, they're much more likely to support government actions and policies. We need statistics for compliance with international standards. Many international organisations, such as the UN, the International Monetary Fund, require member countries to produce and share statistical data. I'm sure the Minister for External Relations could expand on why exactly we need very good statistics for our international relations. Also crucial for business and investment decisions. It's not only the government that rely on our statistics, it's our business community, our finance industry. They need them to make informed decisions about their investments, expansions, their market strategies. And this data needs to be accurate and timely so that it can attract investment and promote economic growth. And finally, so social services and welfare programmes. Statistics are essential for designing and implementing social services and welfare programmes. They help us identify vulnerable populations, assess the effectiveness of programmes, and ensure that scarce resources are reaching those who need them most. So given the need for a robust system to produce statistics, the panel's main concern is that the reduced budget allocations for Statistics Jersey will result in the discontinuation and reduction of statistical outputs and administrative data production, impacting economic statistics like the quarterly GVA reporting. Both the Statistics User Group and the Fiscal Policy Panel emphasise the necessity of frequent and detailed economic statistics for assessing Jersey's fiscal and economic position. The Statistics User Group in Jersey is an independent body established to oversee the quality, relevance and integrity of statistics compiled by or on behalf of public authorities in Jersey. That group, in evidence to the panel, has emphasised the importance of maintaining and expanding statistical reporting by Statistics Jersey to support government policy making, business decisions and public benefit. Their annual user survey, sir, highlighted the importance of public authority stats and recommends quarterly GVA reporting. They expressed concerns about the budget cuts to Statistics Jersey, fearing it would hinder strategic decision-making and policy development. They were particularly concerned about the Business Tendency Survey, the Actively Seeking Work Report, the Energy Trends Report, and also the Jersey Opinions and Lifestyle Survey, which has shifted to a biannual survey with a modular approach for questions. The statistics user group stresses the need for robust statistical outputs for Jersey's competitiveness and sustainable economy. Likewise, the Fiscal Policy Panel also relies on high-quality, timely economic data for assessing Jersey's fiscal position. Whilst they value the Business Tendency Survey for up-to-date, easy-to-understand economic information, which is crucial for assessing the economic cycle and guiding Stabilisation Fund decisions, the FPP actually recommend increasing GVA reporting frequency, and they've expressed concern that budget cuts will reduce the availability of economic statistics affecting their ability to assess fiscal and economic health. And I think that is an important consequence. This amendment would maintain the capability of the Stats Unit to develop quarterly GVA from administrative data and also targeted surveys. It would also provide some capacity to develop other statistics that would be of great interest to policymakers and which do not exist already, as we have been told frequently in our hearings by the Chief Minister. Data around gender pay, diversity, equity, inclusion, even the most basic of aggregated criminal justice statistics. The Chief Minister tells us that the government is prioritising frontline services and delivering value for money for islanders. Without adequate data and robust statistics, how will the government know that they're delivering value for money? That they're not only doing things right, but they're doing the right things. And as I've said many times to hearings in the last few months, the front line can only perform at an optimum level if the back office and service functions are efficient. If you're going on an important journey, you don't throw away your map and your compass. Statistics Jersey is not a frontline service, but it provides those important navigational tools to the front line, tools which improve decision-making capacity and capability across many sectors of our community and economy. The proposed budget cuts will adversely affect Statistics Jersey. They will reduce the capacity, the capability and the resilience, impacting their ability to provide vital social and economic data, which is essential for strategic decision-making and policy development across not only the government, but the private and the third sector and business and our finance industry. In our hearings, the Chief Statistician has been transparent about the impacts and the need for reprioritisation due to shared budget cuts with the Cabinet Office. The panel is not at all convinced that the risk of this reduction to the Statistics Jersey budget has been fully understood. The reprioritisation of its work and reductions are required simply because Statistics Jersey shares in the budget cuts for the Cabinet Office, not because the material they produce is unnecessary or extraneous. Quite the opposite, in fact. A reduction in budget equals a reduction in staff. That means needs cannot be met. And the recognition of the previous government of the critical function of Statistics Jersey has been ignored and actually reversed. This volte-face, another one, was explained away in a scrutiny hearing by saying that as there had been previous growth, there was overcapacity and the budget should therefore be reduced. The evidence we heard showed that this was not the case and that the previous growth funding was awarded to reflect the fact that Statistics Jersey was starting from a very low base and that they lacked the resources to perform its function. And that was before it became a statutory service. The panel is aware that tough decisions need to be made, but the rationale for this one is flawed. As a panel, we are not convinced by the argument. It is a priority. Data and robust statistics across the piece are vital to the efficient functioning of our island. Key priorities in the CSP can only be delivered effectively and efficiently when the elements of those priorities are clear and well understood. So everybody in this assembly is using quotes today, and I'm afraid that I can't call upon J.R.R. Tolkien for inspiration, but I can give another nautical analogy. We mustn't jeopardise the engine room of the ship. It won't sail in the right direction if the rudder is covered, if the rudder is not well maintained and covered in barnacles. What should be full steam ahead will end up with us floating in the doldrums, directionless until the wind picks up again. Statistics Jersey is not a nice to have, it is a necessity, and I would urge members to consider that when deciding upon whether to adopt this amendment. The panel emphasises that the Chief Minister's statutory obligation is to provide the Chief Statistician with the resources they require to discharge his functions economically, effectively and efficiently. The panel therefore urges the Chief Minister and the States Assembly to support this amendment to reinstate the funding. I propose the amendment, sir.
Is the amendment seconded? Yes. Very well. There's an amendment from the Council of Ministers, and I ask the greffier to read that amendment.
After the words will be increased by, for the remainder of the paragraph, substitute 78,000 through the reallocation of other departmental expenditure within the Cabinet Office.
Minister.
I think it's me. Thank you, sir. So the panel's amendment seeks to provide Statistics Jersey with an additional 157,000 by reallocating spending from the Cabinet Office. The Council of Ministers has accepted that Statistics Jersey should receive a further funding allocation, but considers that £78,000 is necessary, as this will enable it to continue to undertake the business tendency survey. In fact, this funding has already been found from within the Cabinet Office budget, so this amendment would support the status quo, sir. There are three key reasons why the Council of Ministers has brought this amendment. Firstly, sir, we believe this will fund the most effective economic data. COM has been provided with the professional advice of the Chief Statistician, the Fiscal Policy Panel and the Chief Economic Advisor, on which statistical products provide the most effective data to inform Jersey's economic and fiscal policy. With this advice in mind, COM is clear that the Business Tendency Survey is the most desirable statistical output. £78,000 is necessary to fund the survey, so this will be provided to Statistics Jersey. Secondly, this is proportionate, so this amendment would ensure that Statistics Jersey's capacity has increased by more than 25% over 4 years, sir, from 15 statisticians and an analyst post in 2021, sir, to 19, sir, if this amendment is accepted. Council of Ministers consider that a 25% growth rate over 4 years is sufficient to enable, it's getting late, it enables Statistics Jersey to produce the data that the island needs. And finally, sir, as the panel has recognised, we need to take a sensible approach to prioritisation. And I agree with the Chair of the Corporate Services panel when she states excuse me, that Statistics Jersey's outputs provide the map and compass to enable ministers to make effective policy for Jersey's future. And that's been a question at scrutiny hearings, concern potentially, or encouragement that we keep the necessary policy resource. The policy work is incredibly important. But we do have a good map and compass. We do have a well-resourced, robust statistical output. However, sir, that map and compass, as she referred to it, is useless if we do not have the resources to interpret the data and provide the effective policy advice which follows. The panel's amendments would take a further 79,000, largely from our policy resources team, which, as members know, we require to be able to develop policy and legislation to make the improvements to the island that we all need so on an ongoing basis. If the panel's amendment succeeds, we will need to take some difficult decisions to stop other policy projects. The government is committed to delivering value for money and prioritising frontline services. This has led to a proposed reduction in the Cabinet Office budget from 26 million this year to 24.18 million from 2027 onwards. We can do this because the Council of Ministers has made sensible decisions, prioritising projects that are most important and deliverable, while stopping what we deem to be unnecessary work, sir. The panel's amendment would provide Statistics Jersey with resources at the expense of us delivering some of these important projects. So in conclusion, sir, I ask members to accept this amendment, as it will ensure we have the economic data that Jersey needs, sir. And I would add at this stage, in keeping the business tendency service going is a stepping stone to starting with quarterly GVA reports to replace that, as recommended by the Fiscal Policy Panel, sir, probably in 2026. This amendment will provide Statistics Jersey with a significant increase in its capacity over 4 years that is more proportionate than that proposed by the panel, sir, in our opinion. And it ensures that the Cabinet Office can continue to deliver its proposed policy programme and that no key projects will be affected, sir. I make the amendment. Thank you.
Is the amendment by the councillors seconded? Does anyone wish to speak on the Council of Ministers amendment? If no member wishes to speak, Deputy Sutherland.
Thank you, sir. It seems to me, I seem to recall, that some time back the Stats Department came under severe pressure and it was proposed to cut back on statistics. I think at the time, either myself or others persuaded this House that stats was the most single important thing that needed to be gathered if you're going to make any statement about your economy or about the state of, say, poverty on the island. I spoke earlier yesterday, day before, seems like a long time ago, about my specialist area, about the requirement, the need to reduce income inequality in our society. Absolutely vital if we're going to go forward. And that can only be done by statisticians working in the department cooperatively in order to do that. And yet today, we've heard, or the day before, we've heard how we are to move to the living wage. How are we going to monitor the effect of the moving to the living wage, and who does it affect and who it doesn't affect, and to what extent? That requires the stats being done. Who, for example, is going to enable the Education Minister, one of his little pet projects, to compare our economy with that and society, with that of the OECD countries, which is one of the essential comparators that you need in order to say, how well are we doing? How well or badly are we doing? And the comparison point is always with OECD figures. Until last year, we weren't taking those. We weren't taking on board those OECD figures. We didn't know. We couldn't say. That has finally, in the last year, been accepted as the way to make the comparison. And here we are, about to scrap it, possibly. We're certainly scrapping something. And again, more. We're taking on more and more factors that we need to know and understand. For example, we just today, I think that was today, set a set of targets for arm's length companies, for example, about sustainable well-being. Do they add or cater for sustainable well-being? It doesn't arrive on somebody's desk automatically. A statistician has to look at the figures and say, and this is how successful we are being. We've set up some targets today which we can only measure and judge if we have the proper stats in place in order to do that. So I would urge members not to accept the paltry £78,000 and the continuation of the business tendency survey, that's one factor amongst many. And I would say reject this amendment. It's not good enough. And do vote for the scrutiny panel's version, which covers more and will enable us to know more and understand our economy and poverty levels on the island, to see if we are making progress or not. And that's vital. I think stats and that full collation of statistics is an essential step in understanding our society, full stop. Must be continued. I urge members to reject the government amendment and vote for the scrutiny panel. Thank you.
Very much. Deputy, does any other member wish to speak on the amendment by the Council of Ministers? Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. The COM amendment seeks to reduce the growth funding and therefore restrict the capacity of the funding to the presentation of the business tendency survey. I think Deputy Southern has articulated quite clearly why this particular amendment to the amendment is not a good idea. It doesn't maintain the growth that was previously given, and it won't allow for other statistics, particularly the social survey. It doesn't provide the opportunity to continue with the experimental statistics or the administrative data that has been so useful to many of the groups, not only political groups, but also social groups. Deputy Tadier talked yesterday about a sticking plaster in one of the debates. I agree, and in this case, of this amendment to the amendment, it's a bit of a sticking plaster to cover a gaping wound that will fester if it's not treated appropriately and quickly. Reducing important statistical output at this point is really short-sighted. Yes, you could argue that half a loaf of bread is better than no bread at all, but the panel do not believe that to be the case in this particular scenario. It's a simple choice. This COM amendment to the CSSP amendment considers that only the business tendency survey should be reinstated. The panel do not feel that this is an adequate sum to adequately discharge the functions of Statistics Jersey, and I would urge members to reject this amendment.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I welcome with at least the acceptance of the business tendency survey. I was horrified when to hear the business tendency survey was being withdrawn, and I cannot believe that a chief minister who's discharged the functions of the economic development minister would countenance the most important statistic, but at least we got that. The Chief Minister referred to a map and compass, the Corporate Services Chair. I completely agree with that, but a partial map is dangerous and is as dangerous as no map at all. Without comprehensive and timely data, it is impossible as a minister to be able to make decisions and make the policies, and relying on outdated, incomplete information. The Chief Minister implies that quarterly GVA reports are not an immediate priority. I'm sorry, but the Fiscal Policy Panel has consistently recommended a better and more frequent reporting of economic performance. GVA is fundamental, or its equivalent is fundamental of measure of the health of our economy. And the public, this assembly, the people, investors want to know. They want to know whether we're growing. And to avoid that statistic being published is not going to do anything to do with confidence or otherwise. I want actually those GVA numbers to be rising, but I'm not sure whether they are. Jersey, sir, remains behind other jurisdictions in producing internationally recognised data. Other nations report quarterly GVA routinely. We remain reliant on infrequent and less relevant statistics in some ways, and this undermines Jersey's credibility, especially as attracting issues like green finance and the other things that we've been talking about. I'm afraid that it is the business survey is fine, but it's not good enough. we need a whole suite of data by our statistics. And I'm glad to be, if I may, receiving some nods of support from Deputy Southern, who I've occasionally sparred with. But what he said was absolutely right, sir. We need a suite of data, including GVA. And dare I say it, not for the first time, we need a proper measure of inflation. We're still measuring despite representations to the contrary, we're still measuring RPI, which was retired as an official statistic by the UK under the Thatcher administration. And I still haven't got a proper explanation as to whether or not we're actually getting the right inflation measure, which is the cost of living. And that might explain why people are so worried about the cost of living, but they don't believe the data, because the data we produce in Jersey is different from everywhere else in the world. Statistics Jersey need the money to sort that statistic out. They need it. And cost of living is vital. It's rising, but I suspect it's rising higher because it's not the statistic that we can compare other places with. And Guernsey comparison is also inadequate. I'm afraid the Chief Minister highlighting a 25% increase in Statistics Jersey's capacity over 4 years as a justification to limit further investment is just not good enough. The context has been, as has been said, a very, very low base. I was one of the only ministers that turned up to statistics for around a long time. I'm not sure whether ministers turn up to statistics briefing, because what they do is valued, important and fundamental to good decision making by statistics. There will be, this is being penny foolish and pound foolish, where basically it's ridiculous, sir. When you're talking about this amount of important statistics for our credibility internationally, I would want the External Relations Minister to be up on his feet and explaining why, when you go out and represent Jersey, you need data which is reliable, robust and properly done. I'd expect to be jumping the Assistant Minister to his feet saying we need it. And I can't believe much of this budget debate is being held like this. I'm almost in tears about the fact we're actually having a debate like this. This is important. Statistics matter, and the Corporate Services Scrutiny Chair is absolutely right, and she will get my full support. But I know, as most amendments in this budget, where basically, it doesn't matter whether I say pink elephants, it's just going to get a government whip majority through. But actually, sir, this amendment matters. And the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel deserves to be listened to, and I will not be supporting the government amendment, and I'll be supporting them what they're doing. Because frankly, unless the Minister can explain why they're doing this in a convincing way, and I look forward to hearing what they've got to say, I will remain as sad as I was this morning when I leave this evening, because the arguments, I'm afraid, are fallacious and not satisfactory and not good enough for this Assembly.
Mary.
Thank you, sir. And unlike perhaps some of his previous contributions to this debate, I'm happy to endorse the comments of Deputy Joseph. In our opening address, the Chairman of Corporate Services, on which I serve, provided a whole range of services which the statistics unit contribute to. And little point in my going through them again. But the simple point is that the panel consider that they're conscious of the restraints under which we operate at the moment. The panel considered we were relatively modest in our requirement for the amount made in the proposition. And it's simply the case, sir, that if it is reduced, then the standard of service given by the government, or the government is able to provide, will diminish. And that alone should be sufficient to hopefully gain the support of all members. As I say, so the chair acknowledged that half a loaf is better than nothing, but half a loaf is not enough to feed what we need to feed. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Teddy?
Sir, we've heard a lot about measurables up till now. We've had a debate about whether or not to put things like sustainable wellbeing in there. We know that sustainable wellbeing is already a part of the government's processes. How on earth is government going to measure what it's doing, benchmark what it's doing, ascertain what the key performance indicators are in there, if they don't properly resource the centralised but crucially independent arm that we all rely on? It's absolutely correct that I do need to pay tribute along with other members, because we rely on those statistics, whether we're in government or as backbenchers, members of the public, and it's remarkably, the statistics that are produced remarkably thorough, but they're also really easy to use and to read. And for somebody like me, who's not always au fait at reading through, very capable of reading through balance sheets, the way they present them is very accessible, and the comparisons that you can make, whether it's parish to parish or indeed island to island or to other bigger jurisdictions, communities, is really useful to getting our head around complex issues. So I would say to government that this isn't something that we can haggle over. It's not simply saying, oh, we'll meet you halfway. I'd say do the job properly or don't do it at all, because we're dealing with an independent body of government here which is giving us all statistics that we need. Is scrutiny going to serve any meaningful function in this process? I mean, what have we all been doing for the last few months? Have we just been getting up in the morning, going to bed late, reading documents, bringing in ministers and officers and even members of the public to speak to them in front of our panels in the Blompier room, in the Capelin room, engaging with the public just to simply have all of our meaningful recommendations ignored by government? I don't think that's what we signed up to. And when we hear very sensible recommendations being made, very modest and moderate recommendations being made by what I would call very centre, middle-of-the-road politicians whom I respect greatly, I respect all members in here, of course, but these are modest proposals that are coming forward from the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. We appointed these individuals to do the job. My good colleague in St Brelard, who won that position for corporate services. I'm so glad she's in that role, and I'm so glad that actually I'm in my role and that she's got a very good team with her. And I would say to members of government, don't let this be one that we're going to be whipped on. I strongly suspect this is probably maybe the last thing we'll debate tonight. I think members are feeling this, we're coming towards the end of the evening. And let's give the Statistics Department the vote of confidence they need, not in half measures, but in full measures, to say thank you. We want you to be able to do your job, independent from government, and to give us the information we need so that we can continue to make the decisions that we need to make in the future, and measure also what we've done up until now in a meaningful way.
Deputy Scott.
Sir, I would like to thank the Corporate Scrutiny Panel and all scrutiny panels for the work that they do. And I believe that a number of members know of my background, having been a voluntary member of the Statistics Users Group with a role of overseeing statistics, and I have great respect for Statistics Jersey and the Chief Statistician. And at the time that I basically learned about the proposed discontinuation of certain statistical series from a member of the press who contacted me and said, well, what do you think about this, given your background? And I said, you what? And I immediately flew to the Cabinet Office and said, what is happening? I actually grilled them. And I don't particularly, I mean, in an ideal world, we would be putting so much more into the production of data. But it is very important to, as we've already done in the case of folks on things like funding to ALOs and things, it's important to evaluate outputs. And indeed, the Corporate Scrutiny Panel in its work did interview the Statistics Users Group, who indicated certain priorities, and these have been taken on board by government. The Business Tendency Survey restored, the GVA, quarterly GVA to be produced. This point about Deputy Joseph, about RPI, I believe that some members who have actually inquired into this may be aware that the UK hasn't been able to adjust the methods of their RPI because it was used for gilts, and any change to methods has to be approved by the UK. But Stats Jersey were able to make changes for Jersey, so that's, I believe what we have is actually better than what we've got in the UK. So actually a lot of work was done in order to just look at what might have been overlooked, how evaluations have been made. But I think it's really important to point out that, and particularly in the context of the stats law, what it's actually doing and how it's going to impact on the way that budgeting is done for policy in the future, because this will affect all ministers and this will affect all scrutiny panels. And just as I would wish them to be much more aware of Controller and Auditor General's reports in terms of getting value for money, I really hope that they will become much more aware of the role of statistics in supporting policies. The law actually says that in future, when common strategic policies are produced, the chief statistician is to produce an actual plan to set out the statistics that should be produced to support that common strategic policy. And that will give ample time for scrutiny to be looking at the government plan to say, well, really, if you want to deliver your common strategic policy, you really need to be supporting the stats. Now, I actually think that this law, somewhat like the cybersecurity law, is actually part of a culture change. We haven't actually got where we want to be in terms of not just the production of statistics, but actually prioritising them. At the time that I had my conversations with the department, I think it might have been, or let's just say that budgetary leeway was somewhat constrained after a vote by the States Assembly that actually was more or less giving a certain amount to culture, arts and heritage. What's more important? I mean, however, decisions are made and everybody's got to cut their cloth, the coat, according to their cloth. I don't want to keep using the same metaphor again, but I do think that the Statistics Jersey is an outstanding outfit. And so we have this increase of funding that's actually has been happening. So the real term change in business as usual funding from 21 to 26 was 45% an increase before the amendment. So in terms of what really has been impacted by the cuts, so we've had one restoration of the business tendency survey. There is discussion of experimental statistics. I actually think it would be useful to really start focusing these around the common strategic policy in accordance with the actual law once it's enacted. And as I've said, the law actually brings in a whole new regime, as it were, for having statistics prioritised and actually emphasised in terms of their delivery of the common strategic policy. And in the other thing that was mentioned by the Statistics Users Group was the Jersey, get this right, the Income and Expenditure Survey, I believe. No, the Jersey Opinion Lifestyle Survey, which it was every we've got another 2 years. A lot of that, actually, if you look at that, it's not actually telling us too much in terms of the way of trends. So there was an actual evaluation of that. The Income and Expenditure Survey, funding for that isn't be produced until about 2027. So there has been a lot of consideration of this in terms of what's available in terms of budget, in terms of the changes that are about to be made. And much as I would love much more to be going into the statistics department, I think that this is a sensible way forward that I can support. And given that we do need to deliver a balanced budget, I would urge members to support this amendment too. Thank you, sir.
May I ask a point of clarification kindly?
Yes, of course. Would you give way for a point of clarification, Deputy?
Yes, indeed.
I just wanted to ask, I was rather unclear as the Assistant Minister was saying about our statistics being better. What I was trying to ask, was she trying to say that our RPI is better? I was saying about that it's important that it's comparable, and if it's not the same, you can't compare it. I don't want to make a second speech, sir, but I just didn't understand what the Assistant Minister was saying. Does she say that it's fine to have a different figure?
Are you able to assist, Deputy?
Yes, I think what I was saying was that I need to actually have clarification on this myself. I think what the Deputy is saying is that he would prefer us to adjust our RPI to make it consistent with the UK, that references...
I think all the Deputy can ask you is what you meant by a particular phrase you used. Deputy Joseph, if you'd repeat the phrase, and if you would say... I'm speaking, thank you.
Sorry.
If you would, if you repeat the phrase, you.
Simply, I didn't understand what the Assistant Minister was saying when she said better, when the argument is comparable, and if you can count bananas or apples, but the two things are completely different. And if you want to compare apples and apples, you have to have an apples and apples comparison. And if it's pears, it's different.
I hope that clarified.
It is between apples and pears, sir.
Yes,
Very briefly, sir, the UK RPI can't be compared to certain other indices because of certain difficulties with that, whereas ours can, and I believe that we can't be compared to the UK because of that. But I suggest that he have a direct discussion with the Chief Statistician in that respect. That is my understanding, and that the Chief Statistician has actually shown leadership in this matter. Thank you.
Colin Arbison Martin? Press the wrong button. Does any other member wish to speak on the Council of Ministers amendment? Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I like apples and pears, probably, I don't know. I'm not sure how many times members, when they ask questions on statistics, on numbers, not on statistics, Council of Ministers and Ministers received the answer, we don't have the data. Recently, simple questions, how much does it cost per day, per night, hospital bed, standard? We don't know, we don't have those data. Or they don't want to give the data. How many outside green space per each school? We don't know, we don't have the data. Now, cutting the statistic jersey, several surveys were mentioned. I think one of the surveys that very close that I used, because we don't have much data and we needed to make policy decisions, and it's really difficult to make policy decisions when you don't have data, the Jersey Opinion Lifestyle survey that now will be reduced for every 2 years. It's very difficult when you cannot have a trajectory, what's happening year in, year out, to make a decision on your budget. And if you're thinking what Jersey Opinion Lifestyle survey covered, personal finance, living in Jersey, getting involved, heritage and conservation, health, well-being, crime, policing, digital connectivity, and employment. How we can make decisions without this statistic on annual base. On top of it, actually each minister and each department can request to add extra questions that can support policy decision making as we're approaching our budget decision. I mean, at the end of the day, this assembly adopted P.29, Draft Statistic and Census Law, which puts duty on chief statistician. So it's government who must ensure that they have all necessary funding. It's a statutory duty. What we are adopting here, what we are voting for here, if we are not doing it. It's started to be beyond my really understanding. We're talking now about the cut in the budget. I think I'm getting to the point. Members, we have budget that increased. It might be reprofiled, it might be prioritized, it might be reallocated, but the matter of truth, all growth that was put in the budget during the previous years still remain in the budget. We're talking about the budget that hasn't been reduced. The budget did grow, not by much. It means the growth still remained the budget, whatever the prioritizations happening. And the statistics Jersey did receive this growth. It's still in the budget. The question, where did it go? And we're talking really about pounds. We're talking about 70,000 pounds, 80,000 pounds difference on 1.3 billion budget. I've done my case.
Any other member wish to speak on the Council of Ministers Amendment? Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. I can't resist having a quick word about policy decisions and data. And it's a good argument to have, because on one hand, we could create as much data as we like at the expense of resource to make policy decisions and develop policy. And on the other hand, develop as much policy as you like, have no money left to put into data creation. The reality, sir, of course, is that we need both. And here we have an amendment from the Council of Ministers which says 157,000 is maybe a bit much. Let's go for half of that. And before members say, well, can we just go for the 157 straight off? I'm looking at this number and thinking, I know where that 157 will come from, and some of it will come out of my ministerial policy development. Work on water strategy, work on carbon reduction, climate change, gas, and developing the new island plan. And I say to myself, I don't want to give up a penny of that, but I know I'll have to. Here's a compromise from the Council of Ministers that says, let's take half of the money proposed by scrutiny. I think it's a good compromise. I urge members to support it.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I've got a copy of the government budget in front of me, loaded with statistics. And one of the things that I wanted to just highlight, which is why I can't support the government amendment, is because those statistics are really important to deliver an evidence-based approach to the way that we plan policy, and we decide on priorities, and we also put policies together that make an impact, which we can also measure, as we've heard from Deputy Jean's proposals this afternoon. So the thing that I just want to suggest to the government is that we've made a lot of progress in the quality of these statistics, in the purpose of them, in the meaning of them. Please don't stop. Keep the quality there. Make sure that you have the capability and the capacity to be able to deliver meaningful information. We've been struggling all along in this debate to get information and data, and some of it hasn't actually been available for one reason or another. But if you build the capability and the capacity in the statistical unit, we can start to help through the scrutiny panels and through our opinions as to how we can inform the development of those statistical profiles going forward. And what government wouldn't want to be in a position where it was able to demonstrate that it understood its business, it knew what was going on in the island, to be able to position itself against others when it comes to securing business, when it comes to securing investment. We should have this information at our fingertips all of the time. Cutting back on being able to produce that, I think, will be detrimental. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the government's amendment? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon the Chief Minister to
Thank you, sir. Can I thank all members who have spoken? Let me start by saying that we have a first-class statistics department. They are well-resourced. They produce very robust and comprehensive statistical information and output. And I'm not aware in my time in government in the States and recently in this role of not being able to refer to any data that hasn't been available from Statistics Jersey to provide the information we need. And on top of that, we get advice and data from our economic advisors and others. So this sort of theme that's been developed a little bit by those in opposition to this amendment to the amendment suggests that we have a statistics unit that is far from what we need. That is simply not the case. We have a good statistics unit. It's been well invested. We've grown the investment in it. We're going to continue to do that. It's led by a first-class statistician and a first-class team of 19 statisticians and analysts. So I meet regularly with the head of the statistics unit and we discuss resources. I completely have confidence in his the way he leads and his prioritisation of his resources and what they produce, and they produce a tremendous output of statistics. Yes, of course, we can always have more. We can always have more with everything. We could have £100,000 for the West of Ireland planning that you want to do. We could do that as well. Let's put that on, and we can just keep going. But we've had to reprioritise, and we've had to reprioritise some very large items, and we've had to reprioritise quite a lot of smaller, quite difficult decisions such as this. And I don't blame the statistics units for coming. This is difficult. This is difficult because we'd like to have more statistics, but we only want to have what we really, really need. And we act upon the advice of the chief statistician and our economic advisors, who we have confidence in, and we have confidence that they are producing the right statistics. In relation to GVA, I did not say that moving to a GVA-based method of reporting on our economy wasn't a priority. It is a priority, and it is scheduled for 2026. The business tendency survey was going to finish now, so that would have meant there would have been a year's gap before that started. So we're going to keep the business tendency survey going, sir. And Deputy Tadier talked about his frustration that perhaps we don't listen to scrutiny. We do listen to scrutiny. We engage with scrutiny. We don't always agree with scrutiny when they scrutinise us and they come up with recommendations. We don't always agree, and we don't have to agree. We as a government, by consensus, we make decisions, and sometimes scrutiny are a great help. They do spot things we have missed and make suggestions that we accept. But it's okay to disagree, and I think we disagree on this one. But it's at the end of the day, it's a relatively small amount of money. But we have to manage our resources right across the whole government, every department. As they say, sir, sometimes you have to look after the pennies to make the pounds look after themselves, sir, and we have to apply that right across the board. And what we often look to do is compromise, find middle ground, find balance with scrutiny. That's what we're trying to do here. And but it's not just that. It's actually we actually feel economic advice, talking to the chief statistician, the business tendency survey is the right one to prioritise on this occasion. And I undertake to continue. We work with the Sustainable Economic Development Minister to liaise and make sure the chief statistician, under their new legislative position, are properly resourced into the future. We will continue to do that. So whilst we might be talking about a relatively small amount of money in the scheme of things, the principle of the way we are reprioritising our spending, sir, is important if we are to deliver the best the best value. We are not compromising the statistics we're producing. We can continue to support first-class statistics, which we get regularly. And to date, sir, I have not found us wanting, when it comes to statistics, to make good policy decisions, sir. And we don't want to dip into our policy resources because it's only an extra 79,000, but that potentially is one member of staff out of policy into statistics. And that's what you have to remember, sir. However, we are always at the will of the Assembly, sir, but I urge members to support the government, support the amendment to the amendment, sir. It will not compromise our statistical output, sir. We have seen considerable growth, 25% growth. We'll continue to invest in our stats unit moving forward, sir. And I ask the Assembly for their support. Thank you very much, sir.
So I asked, I particularly raised a point in my remarks, and the Chief Minister hasn't answered why the quarterly GVA reporting, which is the international standard, which was not going to be possible upon the advice of the Chief Statistician, why he thinks that quarterly reporting of GVA is not going to be necessary. I think I'm entitled to ask that question, so am I?
Well, you're entitled to ask it, and the Chief Minister is entitled to answer it or not, as the case may be.
But he didn't, and I asked him so.
I'm sorry, sir. I did answer that. The Deputy suggested that quarterly GVA reporting was not a priority. I said it is a priority. It's highlighted by FPP as a preferable way to reporting on the performance of the economy, scheduled to start in 2026. I also went on to say, sir, that the Business Tendency Survey, which was due to finish the last quarter of this year, we're going to continue for next year, so there's not a gap. I'm not sure why the Deputy is shaking his head, so I'm not sure what's difficult to understand about that. It's a priority. It's scheduled to start in 2026.
You've answered the point, Chief Minister. Is the appel called for?
Yes, please, sir.
That is called for. I invite members to return to their seat. The vote is on the Council of Ministers amendment to P.51, Amendment 3, and ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted. 22 votes pour, 21 votes contre, 1 abstention.
Those voting pour, the connotables of St Helier, St Brelard, St Peter, St John, Grouville, and the deputies Luce, Morale, Lahegara, Ward, Alves, Gorst, Farnham, Mezek, Horay, Scott, Faltham, Miller, Binet, Ferry, and Ward, and online the connotable of St Juan and Deputy Binet. Those voting contre, the connotables of St Lawrence, St Martin, St Clement, St Mary, and St Saviour, and deputies Southern, Tadier, Ayer, Gardner, Moore, Osif, Balash, War, Miles, Jearn, Curtis, Wilson, and Andrews, and voting online, deputies Dublé, Curtis, and Kovac, and Deputy Coles abstained.
Deputy, who abstained?
Well, we now come to continuing the debate on the third amendment, now as amended by the Council of Ministers. Does any member wish to speak on that amendment? Joseph.
Yep, I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to rise and use my right to speak and say that I believe that it is a shocking situation that we do not have quarterly GVA as soon as possible. I think it is shocking that we have made a decision to cut Statistics Jersey, because if you don't produce information, you cannot basically send out messages of positivity of how well we should be doing. I am disappointed beyond belief that the Council of Ministers did not actually fully undertake and respect the views of scrutiny as evidenced by the Chief Statistician, and I think it is an extremely, I have to vote for at least something, but I think it is absolutely a very, very sad and serious day that the members of this Assembly are put in this position where we have in my day, the Treasury would have found a solution to find a way that isn't a sort of a threatening issue, which we've been faced with the Planning Minister telling us he's having budgets taken away. There's more money about than just taking away money from a policy thing to do the Planning Department, and I can't quite believe that I'm having to, I don't know what to do, but it's just outrageous.
Deputy Southern.
Yes, sir. Just briefly, I know it's getting late now, but at a time when we're adopting, with some difficulty, the living wage, and we'll want to know what's happening to incomes on the island, I think people can expect the income distribution survey, which would tell us what's happening to incomes on the island, will be later than it would have been. And we may well be in a position where we don't know what the impact has been or will be on income distributions at all.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Taddeo.
So I rise also to voice my disappointment. I know we've had the previous vote. It seems very unsatisfactory, late, after hours on the third day of debate, the fourth day of sitting, that we're actually in a halfway house now where we're voting a sum of money which we can't fully be convinced is going to be sufficient for Stats Jersey to be able to do their job properly. It's entirely likely that, in fact, this paltry sum, which we don't know if it's enough to cover the job, I know there's another budget, of course, but this small increase won't necessarily be enough to do the job. It wouldn't necessarily have been put back if it hadn't been for the original amendment. And I look across to my colleague, Deputy Southern, who is possibly his penultimate budget. I don't know. I hope it is, in the sense that... I mean that in a good way, sir.
Deputy Taddeo, I can't immediately see that it can be a good way.
No, because I hope he's here next year for the budget, sir. That's what I'm implying. I hope this isn't his last budget.
Because means that his next year will be his last one.
Yeah. Okay.
Never mind. It's late.
My point is, it's late, sir.
It is.
I said it won't be his penultimate.
Let's rephrase that, sir. I hope that he's still here next year for the budget, sir. And the reason I hope that is because I hope that when there's a...
There we are.
You can tell that we really love each other in our party, sir.
Yes.
Because I hope that next year it's better news, that actually we can...
I think we do have to move on.
Yeah. But can I conclude my speech, sir?
Yes, by all means.
Yes.
On the assumption it's on point.
I'm hoping that next year, actually, we do get to a point where whether it's an amendment coming from scrutiny, a scrutiny recommendation, or government actually finally recognising that we need to give the full budget to the department that's going to do its job, a unit that's going to do its job. For all of those reasons, that we can be in that position. And I'll just reiterate the fact that I think it's perhaps a byproduct of sitting late. That last vote was all over the shop, sir. I mean, I think people will think about this in the morning, wondering whether they should have voted in a different way. We are where we are, sir. I leave it to the mover of the proposition to say whether or not she thinks that this is a worthy proposition to support. I think it is, but it's probably not the full complement that she and her panel would have liked for the unit, sir. So I leave the comments of that. And excuse anybody if there's been unintentional offence, sir. That wasn't my intention.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to thank members. It was a close vote, but I do hear the mood of the Assembly, and the government undertakes to listen to that. I will speak to the Chief Statistician to make sure that he's comfortably resourced for what we've prioritised. And in relation to GVA, I just want to respond to Deputy Joseph, because I do agree it is an important statistic, but there is a 1 to 2 year development period before we can start getting those GVA stats. So I will undertake to speak to the Chief Statistician to see that he is resourced to start the development work for the GVA reporting. But I thank members, I thank the scrutiny panel for bringing that. We undertake to listen and take on board the views on our stats unit, and we'll undertake to make sure they're resourced in line with our prioritisations. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak on the amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Marks to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I'd like to thank all the members that have taken part in this debate. I am obviously disappointed that we arrive at the stage where we only have half a loaf. I also hear what the Chief Minister is saying, and all I would say to him was that I hope the Council of Ministers can somehow find the necessary funds down the back of a sofa somewhere to reinstate that growth funding into the statistics unit as soon as possible, so that they can undertake the very necessary functions that are required. In view of the lateness of the hour, I'm not going to say anything else other than just not to confuse anybody, I would encourage people to support this proposition by voting for. I call for the appel, sir.
Let us call for, invite members to return to their seats, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on Amendment 3 as amended. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted. 42 votes pour, no votes contre, 1 abstention.
So we have 3 amendments left, and I would like to propose the adjournment and to reconvene, because I believe it would be a better way to make a decision tomorrow morning. So I'm proposing adjournment now and come back at 9:30, because only 3 amendments left.
It is always open to the Assembly to revise a procedural decision such as this, and therefore that is a proper proposal. It's seconded, Deputy? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the matter of the adjournment? Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I voted for us to finish at 5:30. The Assembly chose otherwise. I'm up next. I'm ready to go if members want to. We may all be tired, but we will have a long day tomorrow. We will have a complex finance law, no doubt. We will have the substantive proposition, and that's my view.
Very well. Does any other member wish to speak on the matter of the adjournment? Deputy Rob Ward.
So I did say yesterday that staying at 8:30 makes bad decisions. People thinking there's a bad decision being made regardless of how they voted, and therefore, so I think it is time that we took a rest, because I think people's brains are a bit addled. Many people are not here because of other commitments and so on, and we did mention that there's always the risk when we stay this late on a day. We've got the full day tomorrow. I know we've got a few things, but we've got 2 amendments to go through, which we could get through quite rapidly if we really work at it, and then the rest of it. But it's up to the Assembly, sir.
Deputy Southern.
Yes, just a quick word of warning to the deputy who's proposing that we stay, is that way he can almost guarantees that he's going to lose his proposition.
I don't think that's imputing improper motives to other members, but Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. Yesterday we agreed we would stay till 8:30 this evening. I don't want to be here at 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon realising we've still got 2 or 3 hours to do. I've got arrangements for tomorrow evening. I suggest we stay till 8:30.
Very well. Deputy Scott?
Yes, I echo Deputy Luce insofar as I've made arrangements for tonight because we all were actually expecting to continue to debate till 8:30. I've got as much energy as Deputy Curtis. And I very much hope that the suggestion that his vote won't go through won't be regarded as undue pressure, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the matter of the adjournment? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and... Oh, hang on a second. I'm going to give Deputy Gardner the chance to respond.
No, to appel, please.
That is called for. The vote is on whether we adjourn now and resume at the usual time tomorrow morning. A vote against and we'll continue presumably till 8:30. A vote for and we'll adjourn now. And ask the referee to open the voting and members to vote. Well, if members have had the opportunity of voting, I ask the referee to close the voting. The proposition has been defeated, 19 votes for, 23 votes contra, 3 abstentions. We carry on.
Sir, I've tried to raise, just wanted to propose a vote of thank you to the GREF and her staff for providing us with a wonderful refreshments at 5:30, sir. Thank you.
Jolly good, but you did hear we're carrying on. Oh, right. Just seemed like someone who was about to leave and thought the whole thing was over. Right, a moment. So where are we now? I'm lost. Sorry? We're on 21st Amendment. Very well. The next item is the 21st Amendment proposed by Deputy Curtis. I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Paragraph O. After the words as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report, insert the words, except that, 1, on page 53 for table 19, there should be substituted the following table, and all references to the value of the Social Security Fund should be adjusted accordingly. 2, on page 53, after table 19, there should be inserted the words, the project total for the Benefits and Payments Transform project has been reduced by 10 million, reflected in a decrease of 4.5 million in each of 2026 and 2027, and a 1 million decrease in 2028. This reduction is implemented to restore the approximate historic budget for the project and to ensure value for money. It will also result in an increased balance of the Social Security Fund.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Assembly for remaining to their commitment from the previous vote. Sir, I see this amendment slightly differently to many of the ones we've debated, in that the hard work to win or lose this, I don't feel is mine. I think it's the Social Security Minister's. For this is not an amendment to take money and reallocate it. It is not an amendment to increase a budget. It is an amendment that seeks justification and a mandate for an increase in spend. Those who have read my report will see the summary, quite brief, as I hope my speeches are, that the Customer and Local Services Programme, Transform, has a budget proposed to increase in this budget by circa £10 million, 50% of the current approved budget. At the time, no information within the budget justifies this. In fact, I'll read the only paragraph in the budget on this. A major new IT project is ongoing to specify and implement a new transformational benefit system, and it is planned that this project will complete in 2027. This represents a significant capital investment by the fund, which will provide a new digital platform to improve customer service and efficient management of social security benefits for many years to come. So I'm sure for many members, they wouldn't have looked to the table to see a project total of £31 million and think, well, what was it last year? Whereas projects had changes, any other project, capital project, that saw a change in its capital allocation featured in a deliberate table. but this is a project funded from the Social Security Fund, so it was not in that table. So I don't blame members or scrutiny for not picking up on the fact. So we are talking, sir, about £10 million year on year. Now, thanks to the wonderful work of Statistics Jersey, we can put that into comparison. Well, compared to the last debate we had, the funding that the Corporate Services Panel wanted would have funded 63 years of additional funding. Or, if we go to the last average earnings report from June, the amount we're talking about is 226 years of the median paid worker in Jersey. No, sir, that is not the amount to run the project. That is the increase year on year. So, sir, I don't have a huge amount to say on this. It's not for me to defend that increase. It is for the Minister for Social Security. The Minister has provided a comments paper to justify that, but I am still unconvinced, and I hope members receive sufficient justification and assurance during her speech here to be able to put their button contra on this amendment. If they are not assured that £10 million increase in this budget is a prudent spend of money, has been well evaluated, then I'm sure they will vote poor and the Minister will seek additional funding. A few points I would make before I open this for debate. Firstly, would be around the value of asking for more. Now, we've debated commercial sensitivity today, and we've debated keeping budgets low and constrained to help with procurement. So in some ways, I feel I help the Minister. A constrained budget focuses the mind and focuses procurement, something many ministers have argued for today, so I may get some support from them. And secondly, the Minister may provide a case that actually doing nothing will cost us more. Well, brilliant. I want to hear that case. The budget is not a place to make large changes to what we spend without justification. And I accept that the budget has many lines to justify, to allocate funding, but we must be informed when we make those decisions. So, sir, I didn't need to prepare a speech for this. Members have a report, and members have a Minister who I'm sure will justify £10 million increase year on year. So, with that, sir, I make the proposition, and I look forward to those arguments.
Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Well,
thank you, sir. And firstly, I just want to correct what we've just heard from the proposer of the amendment, because this is a one-off programme. This isn't an annual year-on-year 10 million ongoing increase. The systems being replaced are some of the most critical of our IT infrastructure. They administer almost £450 million of benefits payments every year. These are lifeline benefits that people rely on week, and we simply can't afford the risk of these systems failing. I can understand the Deputy's concern about the increase in budget. I had similar concerns myself when officers came and made the request of me. And I want to give the Assembly confidence that I and the Council of Ministers has taken a diligent approach ahead of my own approval of the budget. When the budget request first came to me, my initial reaction was to challenge my officers. I also convened a meeting of the Political Oversight Group, and we had the helpful addition of Constable Géant onto that group at that time as well. And that group consists of myself, the Treasury Minister, Constable Géant, and Deputy Alves as Assistant Chief Minister. I think you'll all agree that we are a challenging group of people, and we didn't hold back on our questions to the officers. But the fact of the matter is that previous delays have led to costs going up, and our current systems have reached their end of life. And I'll remind you again that these are lifeline systems. Now, this reminds me of being an officer, actually, in the department. I'm one of the people in it. It's a shame. I know that Deputy Kovac will be listening in, but her and I have very practical experience of the system and how aged it is, and a lot of the risks associated with the system. But also, I recall that these systems were due to be replaced, and this programme was due to start in, I think, around 2018, in the Charlie Parker era. And in fact, the replacement programme was delayed at that point in time because Charlie Parker had other priorities, including the target operating model. So officers were moved off of this programme onto that. And since that time, the global costs of IT have gone up, and that has resulted in this required increase in budget. Our current system is over 20 years old. It has significant technological risks, and it will soon be incompatible with future versions of Windows. If we do not make these changes now, we risk severe disruption to benefit payments for some of our most vulnerable islanders. Our current processes are also outdated. The system currently requires paper forms to be filled in, officers to waste time copying and pasting from one system to another. There are real efficiencies to be made, and I have no doubt that the new systems will be saving us money in the longer term. Quite simply, we can do much better, and this programme gives us the opportunity to deliver a modern, efficient and reliable benefit system. I do want to talk about some of the other steps that I took before approving this increase in budget. One of the most important people I felt it was to speak to was actually the Comptroller and Auditor General, and get her advice about lessons learned from previous IT projects. And one of the bits of advice that she gave me is to take care about under-budgeting for IT projects such as this. To take care that we had the necessary budget in place so that all of the benefits that we hope to realise can indeed be realised. She cautioned about some of the other problems that have happened with other similar IT projects, such as projects being cut due to the budgets not being available. So I took that advice very, very seriously, and that was key, I think, in part of my decision to approve the budget. Another thing, and this was on the advice of Constable Jean, who's been through many procurement processes, was to seek the advice of other jurisdictions. So we met with both the Isle of Man and with Guernsey to see whether there was anywhere in which we could work together, or even if we may be able to utilise any systems that they currently use. So we went down that avenue to see whether there were any savings that could be made. But it turned out that where we were in the procurement process and where they were in theirs, it wasn't a time where we could work together and make joint savings across jurisdictions. We are now nearing the pointy end of a procurement process, and cutting the budget at this point in time would put that at risk. But what I do want to give members assurance of is I have been very firm with senior officers. I've made it very clear that this is a budget. It is not a blank cheque and carte blanche to spend it all. I will be holding senior officers accountable for them being as efficient and effective as possible, and I give them the challenge to come in under budget. But cutting the budget at this point in time would place this programme, this significant programme for our IT infrastructure, at risk. I ask members to trust me as a minister, trust the political oversight group, but also trust the scrutiny processes that we have in place. I am pleased that this programme is on the work programme of the Comptroller and Auditor General for next year. I look forward to reading her report and taking her recommendations seriously. I also know that through that process, it means that the Public Accounts Committee will receive that report, and I expect them to fully scrutinise the work of my department in this respect. So I am confident that we have relevant and good and strong political oversight. I'm confident that we've got strong scrutiny, and I'm confident that I won't hold back in holding my senior officers to account for every pound that is spent. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Honourable St John.
Thank you, sir. I will be brief. So I'd just like to assure Deputy Curtis that there has been robust challenge of the process, and I've been encouraged and reassured, sir, by our Chief Information Officer. So the difference between this programme and the programme that I worked with Deputy Curtis on is the politicians are being listened to, sir. And I can't say that was the case when Deputy Curtis and I worked together, although we tried very hard. So we did look at joint working, as the Minister has said, whether we could sell the service in the future, whether we could share costs, but that didn't prove to be possible. But I do think just by starting up those conversations with the other two islands, there will be benefits going forward, and that was great that we could put those introductions in place. So where we are, we cannot accept the risk of having a key system unsupported when a system failure would have a catastrophic impact. So this system, the current system, is used to pay pensioners and other people who receive benefits such as income support. So I urge members to reject this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Moore.
Briefly, sir, and I'm fully aware that the Minister is, of course, a former chair of the Public Accounts Committee, so it's heartening to know that she has sought advice from the Comptroller and Auditor General, because we are all too aware of the recommendations the Auditor General has given on previous IT projects, which have not filled us with, as members with huge amounts of confidence, because there are certainly lessons to have learned. And so I'm grateful to the Minister for sharing some of that experience with us. However, I just remind members that this is not a question of whether or not to continue with this project. I think there's no doubt that the project needs to be done. It is simply about making sure that the money attributed to it and this increase, which was unexpected, is accounted for, explained adequately to us as members, so that we have assurance that it is being well spent and that we have truly learned our lessons from the issues that have occurred in previous projects. I remain listening, I think, to ministers. This is a huge amount of money. We've just spent a previous debate arguing over a much, much smaller amount of money. And here we are, £10 million, and also breaking the rule set by another minister on another major capital project, because this is a major capital project, and sharing our full budget for all to know it before we agree the tender process. It's a difficult one, and I think members should be extremely careful about voting if they are considering voting against Deputy Curtis here.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. I hope everyone can hear me well. I had to move online due to parental responsibilities. Do you hear me clear?
We can hear you. I'm not sure how clearly, but yes, we can hear you. We'll say if we can't hear.
Okay. I understand the desire to save money, and this amendment doesn't fully consider the serious consequences of cutting a large amount from a project that is so vital to our public services and to the islanders who depend on them. I don't know how many of the state members did work with the current customer and local services computer system to see its limitations. So I did.
Deputy,
and having
I'm afraid I'm getting indication from members that they can't understand what you're saying and can't hear you properly. I'm not sure if that's just one or two members or if that's the general view. Perhaps people could indicate.
1 second, please.
If I could, I could ask members present to put their light on if they're having any difficulty following what the deputy said. Yes, I'm afraid that's almost everyone that can't make out what you're saying. Thank you very much. But I'm afraid that's almost everyone that can't make out what you're saying, Deputy, and I should alert you to that. Deputy Kovac?
Can you hear me better now?
Yes. So far that seems to be better, so if you'd like to continue.
Okay. So I was saying that I don't know how many of the state members did work with the current customer and local services system, because I did, and having worked directly with the NESI system for almost 2 years in income support, I've seen how frustrating and difficult it is to manage an outdated system. Not only does it limit the ability of employees to do their work efficiently, but it also causes delays and errors that directly impact islanders financially. Many times while helping islanders with their claims, the system crashed, and on several occasions we lost hours of important work that couldn't be recovered. This isn't just an inconvenience, it severely affects the quality and efficiency of the services we provide. The Transform project isn't just another IT upgrade. It's a much needed overhaul of our social security system. The system handles far more than just technical tasks. It holds the personal tax and contributions information of every person on the island. It supports pensions, income support, long-term care, and other benefits that total almost £500 million each year. But this project is not just about upgrading benefits. The Transform project also includes work to bring together the reporting of contributions and our taxes information within the same system. Right now, these crucial pieces of information are kept separate, and this lack of integration means the Treasury doesn't have a complete up-to-date picture of each individual's contributions and tax payments. This lack of visibility results in duplicating work for both employees and islanders. Individuals are often required to update their information multiple times, and the public services staff must process the same data repeatedly. If we get this wrong, it could stop islanders from receiving payments on time or correctly, whether it's pensioners waiting for their old age pension or families needing income support. More importantly, this lack of integration makes it harder for us to verify if employers are making the correct contributions for their employees, and if they are not, this information currently surfaces very late, just a manual check. This is the kind of inefficiency that we cannot afford to maintain in our public services. In my view, this system is more important than any other IT system in the public sector. We have a responsibility to make sure we get it right, because a mistake could have disastrous effects for those who depend on it. Yes, large projects like this can be expensive, and we can't always predict all the costs up front. But we're not buying an off-the-shelf product. We need a system that fits our island-specific needs and that comes with its own set of challenges. Let's be clear, cutting the budget for this project won't save money in the long run. It will only delay the work, and as we've seen with past projects, cutting corners will lead to higher costs down the road. We've already seen delays in this project, partly due to insufficient funding and resources. Every additional delay just adds to the problems caused by the old NESI system, a failing system we still rely on. Right now, we're at critical point. NESI is so outdated that it's becoming a serious risk. The system is running on old technology that no longer works properly and is no longer supported. We can't afford to keep using it until it crashes completely, leaving thousands of islanders without the benefits they need. If we support this amendment, we risk undoing the progress we've made. It could push back the Transform project even further, and the cost will only rise. Instead, let's stay focused on providing the best public services we can, with a modern system that works faster, smarter, and more efficiently. A system that will improve how benefits are processed, give us better data, and most importantly, ensure that islanders who rely on these services can count on them. I ask you to look beyond the immediate savings this amendment suggests. Let's stay committed to the long-term goal of providing a system that works for all islanders and supports the important work for customer and local services. Please reject this amendment. Let's keep the Transform project moving forward. with the right funding so we can deliver a system that will benefit islanders, increase productivity in the department, and improve the level of service for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Connie St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. Trust me, I'm the Minister. Words which I believe we should invariably give a lot of consideration to, and I will certainly pause for thought before I vote on this one.
Does any other member wish to vote? Sorry. Perhaps I'll just breathe for a moment. Yes. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. I'm so sorry. Thank you, sir. I just have a very quick question. I know the Minister for Social Security has already spoken, but perhaps one of the other ministers could address the question. We've been told what the money is for, but we haven't been told why there is such an increase. And that is what I'm failing to pick up from the speeches. What has caused the increase from 21 million to 31 million after the feasibility study, etc.? If somebody could just please explain the ingredients of this increase. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Balash.
Sir, I'm not sure that the explanation that the Minister has given us is very comforting. But one thing that I would like to say is that an increase in the budget from 20 million to 30 million is a very significant increase. And it rather worries one, makes one think perhaps that next year it'll be 30 million to 40 million. It would be helpful, I think, if those who put this budget together could anticipate that somebody awkward like Deputy Curtis might see that there was a rat to be smelled here, and might give a little bit more information in the body of the budget, so that the kind of information that the Minister has in fact given us could have been put in the budget beforehand. Then we might have been able to go home at 8 o'clock.
Deputy Robert.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I can help with that. In the comments paper, it does give reasons for that, and it also gives a link to a letter to the Social Security Scrutiny Panel, which details the increase in cost. I read that myself because I was asking the same question. So there is some detail there if members want to look at it. There's a couple of things I will mention. We are in the good position of having two members of the Assembly who actually worked in CLS and used this system, one of them being the Minister herself, who has had hands-on experience of how this does not work and the problems that's caused. And I think all of us in this Assembly would have had hands-on experience with constituents and trying to help them in order to deal with their claims. And so often it's because information has been lost, or it's been given in good faith, and then we've got overpayments. Let's not talk about overpayments again. I've done that enough in this Assembly. And I think there is a desperate need to improve this system. There are two things that we do also need to remember, as was mentioned. This is an allocation of money, but if it's not spent, it will not be spent. And I think that's a really important thing in everything that we do in our budgeting. And this is a one-off payment for this year. I think we have to make a decision in this Assembly today as to whether we're going to put a project at risk and certainly mean that there is a genuine danger that the system that pays out pensions and all of these benefits, which are so essential to the island, simply stops working. And we've seen errors with it, and we've seen the impact of that as deputies. I know we all do that all of the time. Or we do have a trust in the processes that are going on with the oversight group, the political oversight group. It's interesting to see that the Constable Jehan is actually saying that they're being listened to for once, and that there is an influence there. I know the people involved in this, and I know they are very direct in their approaches at times, and I certainly know that if there are questions, they're going to take them on. So I'm pleased to see that happening. And I do know that there's been an issue with trust for a while in the Assembly, but I think with this is too important for so many people on the island to take that risk now. And I would urge people to reject the amendment, let the Minister get on with it. PAC will oversee, scrutiny will oversee, the CNAG in the background is working on this. Those are the areas where they will feed back to this Assembly, particularly the CNAG. I know that she's about to do quite a lot of work in these areas and other areas as well. So I think at this time we can reject this amendment and we can be certain that there is a process going on and there is a specific reason for the need for this money to get this transform programme up and running for our social security, our pensions, for that area of our island. That's what it's for. So I urge members to reject the amendment for now, please. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No. Chief Minister?
I wanted, sir, to quickly reinforce the point that the transform programme will replace, so this is very important, that will replace the government's legacy benefit administration systems and enable significant essential administrative efficiencies. If £10 million is cut from the transform budget, the programme will not be able to continue as planned, and there would be significant risk to the ongoing delivery of essential payments and benefits and pensions to thousands of islanders, sir. The benefits administered through the system total approximately £439 million. I think, sir, members should really pay heed to that. The team have done an awful lot of work on the details, sir. I understand the contract could well be is with local providers, sir, I'm led to believe. And the danger, sir, if we stop this, there's very, very serious ramifications, sir, for the delivery of those essential payments. Sir, I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Minister. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate. Deputy Curtis, are you able to finish in the minutes we have available to us before we've resolved to adjourn?
I'll make the, thank you, sir.
To respond.
Thank you, sir. I'll make the time 8:23, so that gives me 7 minutes. And I thank members who spoke on this, and I thank those who ask, are they assured and do they have trust? Firstly, I will turn to the comments brought up by Deputy Rob Ward. Yes, there is a comments paper. Yes, it has some details. Are the details sufficient? So I turn to the letter he refers to the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel in their letter on the 28th of October. Question number 8 by the panel. The proposed allocation of £9,899,000 for 2025 is considerably more than last year's projection of £4,046,000 for the same year, and similarly high increases in 2026. What is the reason for the increase? And this, sir, is where we hope we find the detail. The three lines of words in here say the key factors are primarily driven by increases in both market costs and internal staff costs. The forecast for 2025 will be re-evaluated following completion of commercial negotiations and the full business case. So we don't even know the 2025 cost, which is fair. We haven't finished the procurement. But is that detail as to changing market conditions? Sir, I would note that the comments paper itself talks about the inflation and that the project has been going for quite some time. And indeed, those who read the 2021 government plan will see the line, a new benefits and payment system to enable customer and local services to provide a better way to support islanders. Remarkably similar to the line from the budget 2025. And so, sir, I want to point out on the inflation that the budget in the government plan 2024 to 2027 was not just a carryover from the 2023 budget, was not just a carryover from the 2022 budget, and was not a carryover from the 2021. It was a deliberate recalculation during 2023 by the team who fundamentally changed the scope and profiling of how to deliver the project. That is in my amendment report. These are not figures 5 years out of date. This is a 1-year change in budget forecast of £10 million, 50%. So first of all, to address then the Minister for Social Security, I'm not talking about a year-on-year spend, 10 million. I am saying that in 1 year's difference between one budget and the next, the project requires 10 million more in its estimations. And I hear the comments by ministers, the Chief Minister, Deputy Kovac, about the importance of the system. I never question in my amendment whether the system is important, merely that this Assembly must retain good governance over spending. I would have perhaps hoped to hear how the IT market has increased its hourly rate by 50% to reflect this, or that the scope identified by the project, which is incredibly advanced since we have already gone to tender, has changed since the year before. These were not provided as reasons, just that inflated costs in the market have caused this. And this comes at a time when, frankly, those who look forward, and we had a debate about AI and all this, well, actually, the AI for writing software has advanced more in the last 2 years than perhaps in the last 20. You can ask it to write a function, design a user interface, and it achieves a huge amount, and the productivity gains seen can be huge. Where is the waiting for new methods of IT delivery? Sir, I can't provide any more information than members have heard today from ministers and from those who've used the system. And I'm not questioning the value of the system, but we have to be prudent with our spending. We've seen many projects which start with one budget, and we recognise with evidence before us that more money is needed. Indeed, when we approved the last government plan, we didn't approve the total amount for the hospital. We approved enough to deliver this year, knowing we would come back and ask for more. Now, I think, sir, what we would be approving, if we approved this amendment, would be sufficient to get started and would give the Minister sufficient time to evaluate all the options. It would not put the project at jeopardy. It would focus the mind and ensure that the Assembly, when it makes its decisions, has all the evidence in front of it. And it is hard for some of us, sir. We all have different experience. And I have no shame in saying that my expertise and experience is in the delivery of modern IT systems, particularly those that are what we call greenfield, starting afresh, like a rip out and replacement of the transform system. So, sir, I have to scrutinise this from the outside, and I have to be assured that the money goes on the right things, on the developers, on the architect, and on those who manage change as well, but to the right proportions in the right way. And unfortunately, sir, from what I've heard, I am not yet assured. I may need more evidence, given this is my background, than other members. They may be happy to trust the Minister. But I ask them, in trusting the Minister, did they have the facts? Or are they happy to wait another year or even a few months for the information to come in and for this Assembly to make the decision on £10 million increase in one project's budget, 50% of last year's forecast, without it justified? Thank you, sir, and I call for the appel.
That is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. And the vote is on Amendment 21. Ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 12 votes for, 29 votes contre, 1 abstention.
Hold the adjournment, please, sir.
The adjournment
Come with the names.
Can we have the names, please, sir?
Yes, the names can be read first.
Those voting for the Conotop of St Mary, Deputies Ayer, Gardner, Moore, Ozef, 4 Miles, Jearn, Curtis, Ward, Wilson and Andrews. The abstention was the Conotop of St Lawrence. And those voting contre, the Conotabs of St Helier, St Brelard, St Peter, St Martin, St John, St Clement, Brouville and St Saviour, and Deputies Southern, Morale, Nahegara, Ward, Owls, Gorst, Farnham, Mezek, Balash, Coles, Corray, Scott, Faltham, Miller, Binet, Ferry, and online the Conotab of St Juan, Deputy Kovac, Deputy Curtis, Deputy Binet and Deputy Doublé.
Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.